Hey there, it's Adam from Powerbelt 3D. Chris and I have been Twitter contacts for a while now, and not too long ago, he reached out and wanted to chat about belt printing. He mentioned that he was working on a large conveyor belt 3D printer, which got me intrigued. And he also said that he had run a Kickstarter campaign for a 3D printer in the past. So I thought there was probably a lot that both of us could learn from the conversation. I will link out to two things in the description down below. The first is to Chris's Twitter in case you want to follow along with his progress of what he is calling the Z Belt XL. The second is a link where you can find more information about the Tinybelt Kickstarter that I will be launching in November. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Thank you for watching and happy printing. So, first thing I wanted to kind of start with was what's your number one goal for this conversation? It might sound cheesy, but
No,
I want to make sure that if there's one thing that like you have in your head that we make sure we get it taken care of.
well, I mean, I think we're both on kind of the opposite ends of the same idea.
Okay.
Like you're looking at the what's the word I'm looking for?
Accessible.
The most accessible end of a belt printer option, and I'm looking on the prosumer end of the options. But so in that way, like I said before, I said this in chat and I said this on Twitter, is that practically nobody owns a belt printer right now. So
Right.
We're not really competing either, even if we were up against, Creality or Black Belt or all these other companies that are making belt printers. There's only like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
There's still like the market's wide open.
Yeah.
So anyway, my main goal was just to discuss ideas and stuff like that, because one of the things we're learning, since this is such a new thing, every company is learning about how best to implement certain things. And also, since you are doing a Kickstarter and I've done a Kickstarter before, we could just could share ideas about that kind of thing, and things that I've found, and stuff like that.
Definitely. I think I had similar goals in mind. I wrote down a couple questions just so that I can keep my thoughts organized. But looking at, I agree with your analysis. I think that belt printers are early in their development in the ecosystem of 3D printing, right? And I've seen more and more like screenshots of renderings from like different people popping up all over the world wanting to do something similar. So I think the timing is good for both of us. Tell me about your design. It looks really sweet, by the way. At least in the CAD model, the images that you pictured, that you showed. But tell me about like some of your design inspiration. Like it folds, it does multiple materials, it has a huge build volume. Like why did you choose those things?
There's a few reasons. The folding part is actually it came out to be more of a necessity at first.
Okay.
Because I didn't have that idea at first, but then I was having so much trouble with the motors, and the linear rails and everything on that size was pretty heavy, and just trying to get it to mount up properly was difficult. And I was thinking to myself, if I just had a rod that I could place this on the end, I could just lift it up and then secure it that way. And that's what I did. So I actually have the printer next to me.
Nice. I was gonna ask if you had like a physical prototype.
Yeah, it's real.
Okay.
It's real. It's almost finished.
Very cool.
This. I had a couple other show and tell things. These are other projects I was working on. I was working for a Delta Design. That had a couple different options.
Lead screw.
Actuator. And just different things I worked on over the years that some people may not be aware of.
Yeah.
Because not everything has been final design. Some of it's just been hobbyist stuff that I've played around with. So anyway, this is the printer right now. It has this is a 500 by 500 heated silicone bed. that I'm gonna be adding on here.
Okay.
Right now I just have a much smaller one just for testing, and then I want to be adding this on because this is really big. It takes a long time to heat up. It has its
Okay.
own separate control unit, which is kind of nice. So it's got its
Oh,
own power
awesome.
supply. So I'm not saying that's going to be in the final one, but I thought that was a cool thing to start out with.
Yeah, so
So
you can set the temperature right on the power supply,
right.
or do you still control it through the firmware?
You set it on the power supply right now, so it doesn't really have a separate connection to the main. So that's why I'm not sure if I want to implement that. If I did, I would probably have to like put that on like the side here,
Yeah.
but there's some difficulties with that because then you also have to keep track of it, I believe, and stuff like that. But anyway, so you see here, this is how I made the cantilever design, if I want to call it that. I hate to use that term. It's the design that folds up. Okay. So what I
Collapsible.
have, yeah, it's just a 12 millimeter rod up here, and then down here is an M8 screw, and basically, so that it folds up, and then you screw this in, and I've got it's all 3D printed right now, but I would have this as the actual piece that's got a way to screw it and secure it in place. So
Okay.
that way, custom machined. And then I did have a Core XY setup, but the belt length and stretchiness of it with this height and this size was just too much.
Okay.
So I have similar to the black belt design. Black belt also has a Cartesian design.
Yes.
So that's why I have 2 motors down here at the moment.
Okay. I was gonna ask
And
if you had
then
a motor on each side or if you just had a rod
yeah,
going left to
at the
right.
moment, it's a motor on each side. Since I'm currently running with the duet, it shouldn't be an issue.
Oh, for sure.
And then I have a motor up here, and then the idea is this linear rail is going to be wide enough that you can have a carriage, like probably 3 carriages, up to 3 carriages.
Okay.
And then your 500 millimeter width, you could have up to like 140-ish on each if you wanted to have triple the amount of production quality or speed.
Okay.
You could have up to 3 carriages, different color filaments if you wanted.
Yeah.
And then if you were doing a production run with something that's less than 140 millimeters wide, you could run those constantly. So that was
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I came up with the idea. And then the other one was I was thinking about what's the width of something, width and height, that you can design stuff that's way beyond what most people design right now.
Okay.
So I have a whole list of things. Like you could, in theory, and whether you do this on print itself or making a mold from it, you could print like car bumpers. You
Yeah.
could print like cabinet doors, custom cabinet doors. You could do, I don't know if you've seen on different ads, they have these wall tiles that are about 400 by 400, and they have a design on them, and they
Okay.
just put the wall tiles all over the wall.
So it's like
Um,
like geometric textury
right,
wall
those
art.
things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, dinosaur bones for exhibits. I mean, that's one of the things that I like about this is that you can expand so many different possibilities when you have infinite and a certain width.
Yeah.
Like even the existing Creality, people are putting some big stuff on those, and the black belt as well. Um, I don't know if you've seen much up in the black belt, Prano.
I have been lightly following the
Okay.
black belt since its Kickstarter.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the first time I saw it, I was like, man, that's so cool. And then I did more digging and more digging. They
Yeah.
don't post much content from what I can tell.
Right.
Like
And
they don't tweet every day or post on Facebook every day and that sort of thing. A lot of
yeah,
what
and
I've seen
I
is just
think
time lapses.
yeah, because I think they're totally in the business market.
Yes.
And sometimes what I've noticed, when I first started 3D printing, I was in college in 2003, and we had a Stratasys machine. And I knew about 3D printing like back in the 80s when they first had, I have a feeling, I think it was Beyond 2000 TV show or something had something about 3D printing. So I knew about it way back then.
Okay.
And then when I went to college, I did AutoCAD and SolidWorks, and they had a Stratasys machine.
Do you remember
And
what machine it was? Was it a Uprint or a Dimension? Or...
Oh, it was we probably had to mention because it was early. Like Uprint wasn't out yet. I don't
Okay.
think. I actually have what I printed. I designed this and printed it. You see that wheel right here?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I designed and printed that from SolidWorks. I can grab it. If I don't break something. So this came out blue and I just painted it silver.
Yeah,
But it's got a sword design. I wanted to have like something with swords on a wheel because nobody ever had that.
that's
So
super cool. And you
very
kept it
easy.
all this time.
Oh yeah, because this is my proud first print of a 3D printer. I mean that was nobody knew what 3D printing was back then.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love hearing like people's origin story as they got like introduced to 3D printing. And usually if it was before 2012, it was
Yeah.
it was on a Stratasys machine at
Mhm.
college in your CAD class.
Right.
So it's a really, really common story, but still
Yeah.
super cool to think about what that world was like compared to where we're at today.
Right.
Right?
Or even my first consumer printer was the Printerbot simple wooden printer, and it printed sort of.
Sort of. Yeah. Yeah.
It was $400. It was fully kit, fully kit based, and that was
Did it use the
$400 was
Dremel?
cheap.
Did it use the Dremel sanding drum and the fishing line?
Fishing line, yes,
Oh my gosh.
yes,
I sort of want to like find all of these really early printers and like start buying them and like make a little museum. I don't
well,
have space for that. That's a dumb idea, but like it would be so cool to like see it like all in person.
you were at Earth 2019, right?
I was.
Somebody there had a miniature version of that printer on the
Okay.
display. It was like one, it was like half the size. It was like this big. I was like, wow. I wanted that.
There's
I don't know why you do that, but sure, that's
there's
great.
something there's something honestly that makes me really happy about seeing really tiny printers or
Mhm.
like really big printers. It's like
Yeah.
if you make a gigantic cheeseburger, right? It's just something fun because it's not the size
Yeah.
it's supposed to be.
Right. I love scale models, love miniatures, which is something else you could really do if you have like a city model you wanted to print something. I'm just saying that'd be
Yeah.
great. So again, that's why I like, because we're kind of approaching different markets. I really like that Chuck had posted his question yesterday, and then Joel got a hold of it. And anybody who hasn't seen that Twitter thread, it's hilarious.
I never get that much love on Twitter. It's like once every 6 months, and every time it happens, I'm just like, I don't know, super excited for 24 hours.
Well, and that's the difficulty. One of the things that we're probably going to discuss is how to promote and market without being obnoxious or feeling obnoxious. Like I've seen a couple people on Twitter where they have a sweepstakes or a contest or something, and it's like tag 3 friends, and some people are really not happy about that. And I haven't
Yeah,
done anything like that, but we see like I tagged a whole bunch of people I know that are already kind of familiar with the project or interested in it. I tagged those people, just them, and then I had Carl from I knew him obviously from Venturi3D Designs, and he's like, "You didn't tag me." I'm like, "I'm sorry."
it's a belt printer. Of course, he'd be interesting. Come
I
on.
know, and that's one of the things, because I was going on his design first,
Okay.
and I actually wanted to mention this because I've got a couple of things I wanted to show. Because the question marks we have, or I have, is how to best use the belt, and then how to best use a roller. So what I did was I took a Creality CR30 that I got from Pooch, and I completely disassembled it after printing a couple of nice things on it,
Okay.
and figured out how they run their mechanism. I will say, despite some minor issues that people might have had with the belt adhesion, that printer is a tank.
Yeah.
It is really overbuilt. So what I did was I saw that they're using something like this, and I got my own from Masumi. you just screw this in, and then what this does is it keeps it. So this has to be steady. So the front roller has to be on bearings so that it's rolling like that. The rear roller doesn't have that. It runs on separate bearings on the frame, right? Okay, so that's one thing. So the difficulty is I would have to have a material that goes in here where this rod is solid with this, and a separate one where you've got bearings on this material or a different material. They're using some kind of other metal material for the other one. To me, that's going to be a little bit more complicated. So what I've decided is I found this on AliExpress. I have a larger version coming. And I want both of them to have the rod just go into here and then have the bearings on the side, right?
Gotcha.
So what I had to do was redesign the front because I'm not going to be able to use that where it screws in. So right now I designed this last night. It's to hold this in place.
Okay.
And then you can move this back and forth and then it'll just roll in here. So that's my last night thing I'm working on right now.
Sure.
So that way I don't have to worry about two different mechanisms. All I have is one for both ends. And then just one way around that, hopefully.
Yeah, two different mechanisms sounds unnecessarily complicated.
Right.
I mean, it seems like it works very well. So like, if it works, I can't criticize it too much.
Creality is a huge company. They've got access to a lot of their existing hardware and companies they use for getting stuff, and for them it's great. For us, we're still having to figure out what they did and how I can easily, obtain some of the similar stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'm super jealous of all of their resources. But I mean, they started, I don't know, in 2016 or whatever. So like they've been at it longer than we have.
Right.
So with our rollers, both on the Zero and on the new Tinybelt, all of the bearings are in the frame, not on the roller itself. And we attach a large GT2 pulley. On the Zero is a 60 tooth. On the Tinybelt, it's gonna be 80 tooth, so we can get more steps on the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And we just attach that to the roller.
Right, and that's basically what I have on the back. What I was thinking specifically was the tensioning of the belt.
Gotcha.
And then how much, like the iFactory, is that they called iFactory one?
Yeah.
They actually, I had this idea and I didn't know they did it, is they have a separate roller or rod underneath
that they tension the belt with.
I could do that, but that's where I'm planning to keep the electronics.
Gotcha.
And I haven't designed all that yet as where the electronics is going to go, because right now it's all separate.
Sure.
On the black belt, they've got their own control box. It looks like a CR10 control box on the side. And I'm like, I like to have it more, especially because this is so wide that it barely fits on a regular 24-inch wide table. So
gotcha.
That was my limitation. I didn't want it to be wider than most tables.
Yeah, right? I think that's smart.
Yeah, so that's why 500 millimeters was my max. And also I haven't gone to thinking about like the rollers that you have on the extension part. Like the Creality has an extra option, you can add the rollers. It's not a big deal because you have off the shelf stuff that can work for that. It's just a way of connecting it to your printer. And then you already mentioned that you had some thoughts on that, but again, I don't think yours is as necessary.
Yeah.
Because of the size.
I think, in my opinion, from all of my experience, rollers with bearings for the exit of a belt printer is just overkill. I've had luck like stacking books. I've seen YouTube videos of people CR30s stacking books and like printing things that are 15 feet long. So I don't think it's necessary. And so with the Tinybelt I made, you were on the stream, you probably saw it, but a shelf with bed leveling springs to accommodate that. But that definitely gets more complicated when you scale up and all of a sudden your print is heavier, right? And so it's getting more friction on the exit, and then that messes with the belt and how the print moves. So it does get more complicated as you scale up.
Right.
I would
And
assume.
that's where, yeah. And I think Carl would probably be a great resource because he's done a few really long prints on his printer, which is almost the same size as mine. It's like 400, almost 400 wide. Um, Height, I'm not as worried about. It's the width mostly. And then, because the thing about printer heights is most people don't print the height of their printers anyway.
What?
I was thinking about this for Delta printers. I was like, you can make a Delta printer that's at like 250 millimeters height. And the thing about Delta is because they have to go so much higher. It's like, why worry about 400 millimeter height for most people anyway? It's because your printer is going to be this tall when
Yeah, yeah. I I had a similar thought the other day when I looked at my heavily modified monoprice and my modified Ender 3, and I'm like,
Mm.
you know, I can go up like to 200 or like to 250, but I never do. Like I always max out at like
Yeah.
4 inches, 100 millimeters. Like a
Mhm.
lot of the height is just wasted space.
Yeah.
So
But when
something
I'm thinking
interesting.
of, yeah, when I'm thinking of this, like, I like to think way outside of what normal people think of as like, what's the potential for this? Can I print a full size canoe? No, but
No.
you almost could. You could print one for a kid, like maybe 10 years older, something like that
You print
possibly.
one for a cat.
Uh, yeah, so
The cat would be miserable, but
they've actually have printed in full size industrial, like on a arm that
yeah.
printed a full size boat up in like Massachusetts or something.
Yes.
Yeah, so stuff like that, and like I said, car bumpers, stuff for aftermarket cars. I've seen Rocket Bunny kits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's all similar stuff, and if you can print one and make a mold out of it, or do like the Lamborghini, the 3D printed Lamborghini. I was going to reach out to him and like ask him because he uses like the CR10 500 by 500 bed
Uh-huh.
version, and I was
Okay.
going to say, if you were to do your Lamborghini over again, how would you do it differently if you had this possible printer?
Yeah. Interesting.
Mhm. And
Of
I'd love to have. Sorry to interrupt.
no, no, you're
I'd
fine.
love to have a few demo versions of this that I could just send to certain people that do that stuff that are on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
Partially for marketing, obviously, and then partially to see, oh, what can you do with this? There's some people that already know 3D printing, have done 3D printing on their channels, and I'm thinking there's so many different industries that you could promote this. And that's the thing with like the CR30 and stuff like that. People are like, oh, you can print cosplay stuff. Okay. and and large batch parts, which is great, no problem with that. But there's so many other things you could do once you reach a certain size, and that's why I think if we can get this working right, then something great. So
Yeah. Of all of the possibilities, are there like one or two that I know you mentioned car bumpers and like custom parts? Are there like one or two that like are really exciting to you?
yeah, that would be. I love. I always wanted to do a lot of car stuff. I've had a couple of sports cars, or most of my cars have been sports cars over the years. I've always wanted to do something like that. So that just to me, that doesn't mean that's the most popular thing that's going to happen on the printer.
Yeah.
But to me, that's like the thing that I think would be cool. Just architecture stuff. You could print like Roman columns and stuff like that for temporary use, or if you coat it with something, you could, depending on what material. That's the other question, is what materials can we print with this belt? And that's what we're trying to also verify with the new belts coming out that certain people are working on. Can we print more types of materials for
Yeah,
more robust
that's
things?
that's a great segue into one of the things I definitely wanted to touch on was you
Mhm.
say you've tested a handful of different belts. Can you like explain to me kind of like what that process is like, what you've seen from different options?
I have not tested a few different belts. I have researched what other people have tested at different belts.
Gotcha.
Okay, to clarify that. Um, and what I mean by that is like, I know people have the iFactory belt, which is pretty similar to what I have now. And this was just the easiest for me to access that had the right size. and the right for testing purposes. And then I've got the CR30 belt, which is the later one, because I just got this about a month or so ago. So
How does the
one.
Creality belt compare to the hopefully similar to iFactory belt?
Well, the original Creality belt looked similar to the iFactory one, where it's more like a regular material, meaning there's more, it's more porous. It seems like this is
Okay.
way more like solid.
Yeah.
There's a lot less porousness to it, and it printed great. I mean, I have a couple of prints from this. I don't have them in front of me right now, but I printed a long sword. Like, I had no changes in settings. I printed this out of the box, not leveling anything, because I saw on, I think it was Joel's stream, where he had Naomi, and Naomi's like, just print, see what happens.
Yeah.
And he did, and it worked for a bit, and I was like, I'm just going to print, and it printed great. And I was really shocked, because I know a lot of other people with different variations, because apparently they had 3 different types of belts with the Creality releases. And I'm like, I was trying to find out which company they were using for this one, because usually that's some company that would use, because if this is the best design, I'd like to find out who they're using for it.
For sure. Yeah, I think my biggest challenge from day one with designing and building using a belt printer was the belt. And like, at the time, I think the most popular option was stainless steel shim and Kapton tape, or build tack, whatever your whatever your print surface of choice is, and on top of that.
That seemed way too complicated, and I think that's why, because I know Carl had talked about, I think he talked to Print It Solid or somebody about just making one for sale.
Yeah.
And they were talking about it, and then didn't happen. And I think it was the rollers were very difficult to manufacture, and the belt. I think those two things. Other than that, everything else is pretty much off the shelf.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So those are the two challenges. Once you get those, everything else is, just testing and tweaking and stuff like that.
Definitely. Because you mentioned like costs of components and stuff, and it might be too early, but do you have like a target price point in mind for the printer that you're making?
Yeah, so it's changing a little bit over time. Some stuff's a little cheaper than it would have been. Some stuff's a little more expensive. I am guessing between $1,500 and $1,800.
Okay.
That's my guess. And depending on how we promote it, again, first I want to get it working. Once I get it working, and I know it can be reliable, those are the two key things. I already have contacts about getting parts if I wanted to have custom metal parts made similar to the Creality parts, or the black parts that they use, stuff like that. I already have contacts that can print those or not print those, but make those for me.
Okay.
LDO motors, I know Jason from LDO. We've had stuff before. He shipped to me to test stuff. Most of the components, because I've got an orbiter extruder at the moment. Hot end, I haven't decided on yet, but the linear rails, the aluminum extrusions, the motors, all can be from LDO. Yep. So that's easy,
I've heard that they do good work.
Yes. Yeah,
from a few different people.
No issues. Yeah. Well, they do the Prusa, drivers or motors. So, that's a pretty good.
It's a pretty solid endorsement.
Yeah, exactly. And so other than that, that's the basics. And of course, the other big question is bed leveling. Okay. And bed leveling to me is more complicated on this type of setup, obviously, because there's the angle than a regular setup. So I'm looking at, I don't know at Black Belt if they have like a bed leveling setup, or if theirs is just so precisely built that they don't have to worry about it, or
I find that unlikely personally, but
if you look at the specs and the pictures, I don't really see what they're, because they've been out for what, 3 years, I think, with that.
I
And
think
I
they,
have to.
if my memory is correct, and it could be wrong,
Mm.
so I deserve to be fact checked. But I think I think their Kickstarter was like in 2016.
Yeah, it could be.
Like they've been out for a while.
Yeah, and they were using like a carbon fiber bed type of thing,
Yeah,
and that being where their cost is, because, and I am not throwing shade at all, Black Belt. If their printer's $12,000 and they got $12,000, or certain amount of parts that are worth that much back in the day, because again, things were a lot more expensive 4 years ago or 5 years ago than
for
we're
sure.
now.
For
So I'm
sure.
not going to throw any shade about that. I haven't used their printer. I don't even know if I've seen one in person. But they got a successful business. They've been around for that long, and they're still selling printers. So good for them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they've got like a service plan and all the stuff that you would have with a business, that I'm probably not going to have, at least initially. Turnaround, 24-hour turnaround. Hey, this part I just received doesn't work. Okay, let me get you a replacement part. Stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am planning to have these pre-built, or be pre-assembling them instead of having as a kit.
Okay. I think that's a good move. And I think I said it on the stream the other day, but like I thought having kits would be like the way to go, because yeah, I only have so many hours in the day. And well, it's worked out for some of our customers. For some of our other customers, they're just like, I'm having problems constantly.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I'm like, I thought the video walk you step by step was very clear, and I thought people buying this would be very experienced in 3D printing, and not
Yeah.
everyone was.
No, and what hints to me about that, or I don't know how to say that right. What that hint was to me about that is when you have like a really simple 3D object or a model from Thingiverse, and then people like, this isn't exactly what I need. So just go in Tinkercad and fix it. And they're like, I don't say that to them, but I'm thinking in my head, and they're like, they have no clue. A lot of people, if it's not available on one of the websites,
They
they
don't
have
print
no
it.
clue how to. They have no clue how to design or anything. So, and I'm not blaming them. Some people don't have any background in that,
And
It's fine.
everyone starts somewhere when they're learning
Right.
about a new
Yeah.
topic. But no, that's a really interesting parallel, because I can remember when I used to post models for fun on Thingiverse regularly, I would often get like, "Oh, can you make this bigger? Can you make this smaller?" And I'd be like, "No, man, I'm doing
No.
this for free." Just
Free.
to your point,
Yeah.
throw it in Mesh Mixer, like put a hole in it.
Mhm.
I don't care. To your point, skill levels are different. Um,
Yeah.
do you see your printer being a prosumer or a business targeted machine?
Well, that's the question. Like, what's the difference if we're going back to what I just said about Black Belt, and I'm assuming, I really don't know what their business model is, but I'm assuming that they have like a support channel and stuff where they directly work with them on how to do stuff, because they have their own Cura version, which I'm looking at, because since my printer isn't Core XY, theirs is the closest right now as far as setup wise to mine. So I'm looking at their Cura just to see what's different. So when you have stuff like that, when you've developed your own slicer per se, even though it's based on Cura, you're kind of pointing towards, hey, we're a more direct support system than having a Facebook group or having a Discord, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, I would love to be both prosumer and a full business model, but obviously at the moment I don't have any of that set up. If we start selling a whole lot, then sure, we can expand and get loans and grow the company that way.
Sure.
Because I think you saw my first Kickstarter. I think, did you read the?
I did. I watched the video, and actually, man, this conversation is flowing perfectly. I was just looking at the clock, and I'm like, we have to talk about Kickstarter before we wrap up.
Yeah.
So yes, you did a Kickstarter before. I watched the video, and I was blown away. Like, you promised the moon and beyond. And then I was
And
like,
that's why it was so high.
I kind of get why you decided to cancel it. So tell me about your Kickstarter experience, promotion, what was all of that like?
I was naive and young. No, I'm just kidding.
I made a
So
horrible mistake.
yeah, so my thought was, because I had seen all the potential, and I was always under the impression that if we made it simple enough, we could expand it to not just hobbyists and technical geeks and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
try to expand it to regular people eventually. And one of the components of that was to have a really robust printer that can print multiple colors and materials. And since Prusa was the standard for 3D printers, and I figured their MMU, first
Yeah.
generation MMU,
First gen MMU.
I could improve on it, which I actually kind of did. I figured out some of the flaws, and if you look at like the Chameleon and stuff like that, there's other people using a similar setup that are actually working much better.
Yeah.
But that was kind of just one component. The other parts was try to have a whole bunch of models preloaded, and then also have a detection system where all you have to do is scan like a barcode, and then it will know what filament it is. And then I had a way to change G code on the fly.
Okay.
So once you scan it in, it says, I want filament 1 to be this one that I just scanned in. That G code gets changed to filament 1's being this PLA with this temperature and this speed or whatever.
Gotcha.
So that part worked. The difficulty was, in order to do the rest of it, I would have needed a staff and a lot of other stuff for testing and stuff like that. So my budget, or my Kickstarter goal, was $180,000. Now that sounds crazy, and it is, but there was also Kickstarters making millions of dollars at the time for 3D printing.
180,000 is not ridiculous. Based on everything you promised, I think you should have gone for $500,000, honestly. Like 1,000 preloaded models. And to your point, I think that if that had become a reality, like my mom could have used it. And my mom is not a technology person.
And I still love the idea of, I love the format that I made where it's got the for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's up there, you can find it. It had the 4 rows of filament on the side inside the printer. And then so it was all in one unit, and it looked like a microwave. That was on purpose.
Yeah.
And it had a touchscreen on the front, which is basically Android based touchscreen, Duet Wi-Fi, DuX5. Everything was great. The only thing that wasn't great was the MMU 1.0. And I brought it to MRF 2018. And the same day is when Prusa came out with the MMU 2.0. And I talked to Joseph, and I'm like, what's up with this,
dude?
He's like, because he's like, 1.0 wasn't working that well.
And you were like, I know.
I know. I mean, I had all full faith that with like a custom drilled, because it's basically that coupler, the MMU coupler is the only issue.
Okay.
Once you get if you had the right, I would say custom drilled with some PTFE tubing, if you get that running right, and there's been a whole bunch of design changes over the years, and people have made variations of it that have worked well, so anyway, though, that was my first Kickstarter idea. The other thing that happened at MRF 2018 was the tool changer came out.
Gotcha.
E3D introduced the tool changer, and I was in awe. And so
I'm still in awe.
So I developed a tool changer of my own.
Okay.
And nobody bought it. And
what do you mean nobody bought it?
I did pre-orders.
Okay.
And
through a website.
Through my regular Venturi3D Shopify.
Yeah.
And I had introduced it at the Virtual Earth. And there was a couple of factors where I didn't keep selling it. One was this had Chimeras, 3 Chimeras, and E3D at the time didn't. And then E3D was going for about $3,500 total for theirs. And mine was going to be about 24, I believe.
Okay.
But then they were able to get theirs way cheaper and with Chimeras. And everybody knew E3D. They didn't really know me or my company. And at that point, everything else is going on at the time through 2020, and I was like, "It's
the timing isn't
not
right.
A good time. Time is not right." And also, the tool changer is still, because of the difficulty programming, setting it up, it's too niche to be a large seller.
Yeah, it's
You know,
developmental.
it is. It's very developmental, very niche. And when I decided to go to a different direction with the belt printer, this is much easier to build. It's much quicker to set up. There's no special custom settings really. It's just a different, you can use Idea Maker, you can use Kirimoto, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, you got it right.
And yeah, and stuff like that. So that's why I've been focusing on my spare time, because I do all kinds of 3D printer design ideas just in general.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me going. When I'm at my day job and I'm not having fun, I'm just like, when I get home, I want to design some stuff. And so I've already had one person offer to put a down payment on a printer, and I haven't even finished this yet.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. So going back to you and your design or your Kickstarter, I have a couple of things I just wanted to mention, and you probably already know all of this. So anything I say, I am not going to assume.
I might not.
Okay.
So please.
Number one, don't set your goal too high.
Okay.
The reason, it's a psychological thing.
Okay.
And I've learned this from different people in Kickstarter, stuff like that. So obviously you need to make enough to run your company, or to get the first stuff shipped, or whatever your goals are. Are your goals to just build this all yourself? Are your goals to hire somebody to help out? Are your goals to open a factory? That's obviously the first question is, what are your goals for the initial launch? Because that's the whole idea of Kickstarter, is to initially launch. So the thing is that once people say, oh, it's funded, that it relieves a lot of pressure from people saying, oh, I should go ahead and back this because it's already funded, even though technically you might be looking for, I'm just going to throw a number out there, $30,000. You might actually want to put it for 20 and let the rest go that way. You know what I mean? Because you might make more looking for 20 than you are 30, even though technically you really are looking for 30. You get what I'm saying? So again,
yes, I do, and that's something I hadn't thought of.
So definitely, I've known that. I knew that. I figured this out after my Kickstarter, so it's good to have these tips before. And you can do whatever you want. I'm just giving you my thoughts on it, obviously.
I planned to do whatever I want, but thank you for giving me permission. No, honestly, I've been meaning to reach out to some people that have done printer Kickstarters in the past and be like, hey, what did you learn? Because it's a marketing platform and it's psychological for the backers, and it is frowned upon by many people. So
yeah, and that's going to my next question for you. And I hate to say this one because it's kind of really difficult to elaborate on, but who is your target market? And obviously the question always with 3D printers is it for new people that don't know 3D printing, or is it for people who already know 3D printing, et cetera, et cetera? And I know you already had a little bit of that discussion on the stream the other day.
Yeah. My
so you don't have to answer me right now, but because when you're talking about 3D printing, we have people that are very skeptical of any Kickstarters related to 3D printing for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
There have been so many specifically 3D printing Kickstarters that have screwed people over.
Yeah.
The guy that bought the house with all the funding.
Yeah, PG printer.
Yes, I mean, so we're kind of in a difficult part because of that.
Yeah, there are Kickstarter horror stories, and when I look back at all of the Kickstarter horror stories, it was very difficult to figure out who was actually behind the Kickstarters. Whereas I'm taking an approach of I'm putting myself out there on every single video, my real name, face, LinkedIn profile, et cetera, et cetera. I've been in the industry for years, so it would kind of screw me over. Because this is what I want my career to be if I just went to Mexico. So there's some of that involved, I think.
Mhm.
Um, I think um, from a capability standpoint, a lot of Kickstarters, 3D printing or otherwise, failed because like the founders or the founder just didn't have the experience.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas at this point in time, like I've gotten my feet wet with sourcing parts from China, knowing which suppliers are
Mhm.
good, which suppliers are bad, which deliver
Yeah.
on time, which are always going to be 3 weeks late. All of
Yeah.
those things, and I know what things cost, so I think I can avoid that.
Mhm.
Um, my target market is people who have a 3D printer, whether it's an Ender 3 or a CR10 or whatever, and want to play with belt printing.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's it might change over time, but that's where I'm at today. Like based on
Yeah.
my experience with Idea Maker and with um, belt printing, I think it's at a point where that type of person can have success with it. And that's why I'm
Mhm.
offering them 90% assembled as kind of like the default
Mhm.
so that people don't need to go through a 10-hour build like they did for the Zero. And I admittedly did a poor job of communicating that
Mhm.
loudly and clearly. I thought I did, but looking back at the journey, I clearly did not.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be for people that grew up building Legos that liked building stuff.
Yeah, that's
But
always
what I found is that like the market itself, I think, has gotten used to the Creality experience of like bolt,
Mhm.
bolt, bolt, bolt. I'm printing my first lucky cat.
Right.
So it's matured from when I
Mhm.
started, when I had an acrylic printer and half of the information I needed in the instructions, like to put it together.
Yeah, yeah. My simple wood, I had to put the rods in the freezer because they barely fit. And it's like, oh, put the rods in the freezer and they'll shrink a little bit, like micrometer, that kind of stuff we had to do back in the day.
That's such a
I know,
weird tip, but
I know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, all that kind of stuff. It's amazing how stuff has matured over time with the 3D printing market. So anyway, obviously, since you've already done one uh, pre-order setup, whatever, you already have good grounding in that, and um, you understand what things cost, what stuff like that. So my other advice, and this is for anybody, is what's your profit margin going to be? Of course, you don't have to say that out loud,
Sure.
but you want to have enough profit margin. And also, I think you're in a great situation. And this is not for everybody, but a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is money I can toss away. This isn't like my printer is going to be a lot more of, can I afford this? Is it something I need? That kind of thing when you're reaching those levels of cost. And both of my printers that I've offered have been
Yeah.
in that level. So I haven't offered cheap printers for many reasons. But I think you're in a great spot where it's like Joel's saying he's already going to buy five. I don't know if he's actually going to do that, but stuff like that. When it's that price point, you are a much easier
It's
situation.
cheap. It's
So
cheaper than an Xbox, right?
yeah,
It's accessible. Yeah.
right. And I mean, I'll buy one. It's just I like the idea. I know basically how your design is. I know you're not totally whole sizing it yet, which is fine.
Yeah.
I actually thought about making my own for about 5 minutes, and I was like, even if it works, it's not going to look right on this size printer. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
On that size, it's great. On this one, I'm not. People are gonna be like, "Are you sure that's no?" But yours is fine. I think you've got that, and you're not going to have a lot of weight on the hot end anyway. Because
Right.
you're on Bowden setup. So anybody worrying about weight, and I'm not worried about it.
Um, the I put it away, but the X-axis mount, like it's so stiff. Like
Mhm.
I handle 3D printed parts all day that when I like hold a 3 millimeter steel laser cut bent part, I'm just like, how is this even possible? But yeah, I'm hopeful. Our aluminum came in today,
Okay.
so I'm super excited. I
Yeah.
it showed up at like 5:30. I had to
A
open the
question
boxes
for you on
immediately.
that, actually. Does yours have threaded inside the
Um,
sides?
some of them do. So this is
Like not
the
on the ends, but on
this
the
is
sides.
this is the front of the frame.
Okay.
And the insides are threaded, not the
Yeah,
sides.
not okay. Because I
Um,
noticed on the CR30, they actually have threading on the sides for a lot of their screws, and I was like,
yeah,
I don't know if you can just order it that way. I asked Jason if he can do that, and I'm not sure. I think the answer is yes.
yeah,
I can do it. It's just more time consuming.
yeah.
And I'd rather have it, sent that way, so I don't have to worry about it. It's okay. I just screw it in.
The
Um,
the Zero had some, and I haven't gone through LDO, but I found an aluminum extrusion and fastener supplier in
okay.
China that um, I've verified does very good work. And they
Mhm.
do custom machining; they'll do anything.
Okay.
Um, so
Yeah, because I can go through assuming I can order, they're more expensive, obviously. And you can do holes, but they're not threaded on the sides, they can just do holes.
yeah,
No,
I mean it's something, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
With this one, the frame is smaller and it's simpler, and as I was like thinking through it, um, it's easier to machine. It's about the same price
Mhm.
as if I had holes in the middle of the beams, but um, I just think it'll be a better build experience for
Right.
the user or for uh, myself or
Mhm.
maybe anyone that I hire to build these things.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, do you have any estimated, like, how long does it take to build for yourself? Like, because you could factor that in as well. Like, okay, if I'm doing this, how long does it take? Do I have a assembly line set up? Because that's what I plan to do probably. But no matter what printer I was going to design, is have stations for my own or whoever does it,
yeah,
just to do these in a row, and then that
that's
kind of thing.
that's the goal. Right now, I
Okay.
have no clue because I haven't actually built one in person yet. Um, Hopefully, very soon. I have uh, an idea of it because like I've built the Zero and I've built many of them, and so I know what that took. I know that this one's simpler, so I can make estimates from that. But,
A few more things I wanted to cover quickly.
yeah, sure,
Um, do you plan to ship internationally?
I do.
Okay.
Um, it's challenging,
Mhm.
but based on all of the research that I've done, a non-Wi-Fi connected 3D printer falls into a class of electronics that um, you can self-declare electrical conformity, um, and I am comfortable enough doing that because I'm just buying all off-the-shelf parts that have their own electrical conformity. I'm just putting them together.
Yeah.
Um, and I use software called ShipStation, which I'm happy to publicly endorse because they make shipping very easy. Um, and so that's like if I didn't have that software, all of the customs and the paperwork would just drive me nuts, and I wouldn't be able to do it. So
Right.
yes, I'm definitely planning North America, Europe, Australia. Those are the easier places to ship to.
Yeah, I've just heard rumors, and I haven't researched it too much yet. Is that supposedly the EU has more stringent regulations on electronic parts, but I don't know details at all
Yeah,
on that yet. So that's just a thought, and it could be from certain countries. I don't know.
yeah.
Um,
It's a valid thought, and since you brought it up, I will make a note to double check that nothing has changed. So
yeah. I also, and you may not have to worry about this, but I like having a backup plan for part suppliers in case anything happens. Obviously, right now, getting parts for a lot of stuff is time consuming. Don't overpromise shipping times for
yes,
Kickstarter. That's another thing that people really get upset about. I know certain companies, I'm not going to name who, have had difficulties recently. Established companies too that
yeah,
have had difficulty recently with giving feedback. Number two, give feedback. Anything that happens, always update people, no matter if it's bad or good,
Yeah,
because that's what really make people upset if they don't have any feedback.
I agree. And I think I'm hopeful that because I did a pre-order previously, and it
Mhm.
wasn't quite a pre-order, but like I'm making these beta units, so I'm hopeful that like through those
Yeah.
experiences, like
Well,
I can.
that's the other thing that I didn't really have a lot of data unit testers. I did have one other person that bought a printer before my Kickstarter,
Nice.
and since I never actually developed it finally, I've refunded him. But
It's nice of you.
and then of course everybody else got their money back from the I had 42 backers for my Kickstarter, which is not bad after a week and a half.
Not
I
bad at
put
all.
$12,000, I think. So it was sort of a success in that way. I mean, I convinced that many people to contribute, so that's something. And I learned a lot, and sometimes that's the best thing you can do is learn a lot and kind of be glad that you might not be stuck with an older printer style.
Yeah,
I don't expect the belt printer to be outdated anytime soon because of how many things you could do with it. So
yeah. I I'm hopeful. I can relate a lot to the I learned a lot mentality. It's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. Is it's like
mhm.
as I'm retiring the zero as a product, I'm like, you
Yeah.
know, sitting where I was at the time. Um, it was the best I could do, and I did get carried away with some of the features that distracted
Mhm.
from the original
Oh
goal
yeah.
of
Yeah.
the Ender 3 of belt printers. Um,
Mhm.
but like I've learned so much along the way about like business and marketing and
Yeah.
mechanical design, like so many things I can't begin to.
Yeah. The other thing on Kickstarter, and there's going to be many different opinions about this, I wouldn't focus too much on stretch goals or other extraneous stuff.
Okay.
I would focus on the core product, getting the core product marketed, and if they're interested in the product, they're going to buy it. You know what I mean?
That's
I don't
so
necessarily
refreshing.
subscribe to. I don't necessarily subscribe to the. Oh, I'm not going to buy it unless, or I'm not going to buy two of these unless I get an extra roll of filament. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's gimmicky to me.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's very refreshing because typically when I do a pre-order or I do I'm planning a Kickstarter, I get lots of people like piping up like, "Oh, well, you should also offer a duet version,
oh
for
yeah.
people that might want it. And oh, you should also offer um insert whatever, like
Mhm.
one with an orbiter extruder, just in case someone wants one or like
And
whatever."
what you can say to that is, okay, once the Kickstarter is successful, we will definitely consider that in the future. Like I already had somebody, and this wasn't their suggestion, but they just said, with your folding printer, you could put a handle on it and people could carry it. I'm like, well, it's kind of wide for that.
It's
But I
pretty
was like,
large.
in theory, I could make a 350 by 350 eventually. I'm not going to do it right now, but I could offer a size for that. But again, there's reasons that I made it this size. So,
Yeah. The other one that I think has come up a few times is like, oh, well, you have to have a roller attachment like on the front.
right.
Like you have to have that. And I'm like,
I don't think so for your size. I don't think so.
I'm like, I get that, but maybe we just like keep it simple for the Kickstarter. And like once you have your machine and you use your machine, I will happily um, sell you an $89 large part roller
Mhm.
add-on.
Or find a really good affiliate link or something that's a good size that you could just say, go ahead and match it up with this if you don't want to do it yourself. I'm looking at possibly having that. It's um I'm finding ones that have like a floor where it expands this way and
Okay,
then it reaches all the way to the floor. I'm
gotcha.
not sure if that's going to be popular, but it
It sounds cool.
could be. Yeah.
Cool. I'm looking through my list of questions.
Mhm.
I think we got through all of them. Without me having to go back and like make an awkward transition. So that never happens.
Yeah.
But any other closing thoughts?
I think that's it for now. I mean, obviously we can do this again if we've got other updates or things. Like I'm glad you have got the beta testers. I really wanted to do that, but I was like, I can't guarantee any time away from what I'm doing right now
Yeah,
with as much as I'm working my regular job.
for sure.
So that's why,
I
if you feel like you want to send me a box of parts to put together, sure, I'll do that. But I can't guarantee how quickly I can test anything.
For sure. No, I understand and I respect it. I went full time with Powerbelt in December of last year. Um, so it's been really cool to get to like put all my focus on this. Um, and yeah, I wish I could send more people boxes of parts. I genuinely do because like the response that I got initially was like so much more than I normally get when I publish things.
Yeah.
And like I felt bad trying to narrow down the list to like a reasonable amount and time frame. And even at this point, people are like, "Oh well, like I would like one if you have any extras." And I'm like, "I've got 3 extras." Like,
Yeah. You might want to keep one for yourself just in case you need to do anything.
right, like I need to keep one for myself. That's a non-negotiable. And then like
Yeah.
I keep secretly hoping like maybe some of the big creators will care enough to check one out.
Yeah. And then for you, it's probably not as big of a deal. For me, I'd be like, can I send this out and then have them ship it back so I can ship it to somebody else? That kind of thing.
I had a similar thought as I was like, they're pretty small. If you don't want to keep it, you just send it back. And then
Yeah.
because I don't have Creality resources to be like,
Right.
we have 100 CR30s to send to people.
Right.
Um,
Hopefully soon we'll have those resources.
yeah. Well, it takes time. So
Mhm.
all right. This has been fun. I appreciate you taking time in between your 2 shifts.
No, it's good to do it. And like I said, I think for us built creators, we could stick together. Well, I was even thinking maybe I have a Discord just for Venturi3D,
Okay.
which is the name of my company, by the way.
Say that again.
But I was thinking Venturi3D.
Venturi3D. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe just have a Discord for all belt printers, just a belt printer Discord for everybody to use.
That would be awesome.
If anybody wants to set it up. Yeah. Like, do you have a Powerbelt Discord yet or no?
I started a Powerbelt Facebook group, a Facebook user group. It has not.
Okay, I'll join that.
It hasn't achieved what I wanted it to achieve. It's very low engagement. It's a very small fraction of our customers. It's really just a place for people to get together and complain at this point. If I'm being honest.
I mean, that is Facebook in a nutshell. So.
Exactly. But so far, with Discord and with the interaction with the beta testers, it's easier for me to get in there. Like I also didn't check the group very often. But for Discord, just the interface and like the flow of the conversation, it works better for me. So that's definitely something that I'm thinking about. And a generic belt printing Discord would be super cool also. That way people can compare thoughts on different
brands. I don't know if I would want to run it or if I would have, I don't know who would run it or, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the only problem because you have to have somebody as a moderator and all that fun stuff. So
yeah, definitely.